Hi, I'm Martin McGrath from Financial Edge Group, and today I want to talk to you about how you're getting your money into superannuation. The most common way to get money into superannuation is what's called a contribution. There are actually many different types of contributions. I'll talk you through a few of those now. Everybody, assuming you got a job, has what's called employer contribution, and that's where your work puts money into your superannuation on your behalf, and that should happen every year that you're working towards retirement. In addition to the employer contributions, you have the option to do what's called a salary sacrifice contribution, which is where you say, hey, instead of paying me that wage or a bit of that wage, I'm going to send that money into my superannuation. You can do that per pay. So let's say it's an extra $50 per week. That money goes into your super instead of you taking it as a wage. And that can happen every week. If you don't want to do that, there's another thing that's called a personal concessional contribution. And that's where at any time during the year, you've got some money that perhaps you've saved up or you've sold something or you won lotto and you want to put some of that money into your super fund and you want to claim a tax deduction on that. You can just decide, hey, I've got 5 or 10 grand, I'm going to put that money into super and I'm going to claim it back on my tax. You can do that. There's some forms and limits and stuff you've got to be careful for, but it's a good way to get some money in and save some tax at the same time. Separately to that, there's a few other types of contributions that don't relate so much to tax, but they're just a ways to get extra money in, and they're called non-concessional contributions, and that's where you put money in. It's generally a larger lump sum. It might be 20 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, and there's ways to do even more, and that might be you received an inheritance, you won that lotto ticket, you made a friendly stranger who just gave you a lot of money and you want to put it in your super fund, and you can do that. And that's called a non-concessional contribution. And you can do that every year, subject to certain limits. In addition to that, you might be eligible for what's called the co-contribution, and that's where you put a little bit of money in and the government basically matches that or puts a percentage of money in there for you. It's basically free money from the government. There's another one which is called a spouse contribution, and that's where your partner puts some money in your super fund, or vice versa, you put some money in your spouse's super fund, and they get to save some tax or you get to save some tax. That works really well if you're on different tax levels. And then working through the journey, once you're retired, there's actually even extra ways in when you stop working, which is what's called a downsizer contribution. And that might be that you had a big house which you raised your kids and your family in, and then you've retired and you feel like you don't need that house anymore and you sell that and downsize. That money you get from the sale, you can put a large chunk of that into your super fund as well. So there's a variety of different ways to put money into super. Some of those you might have heard of before, some of those you haven't. Check out some of our other videos, because basically every one of those that I've spoken about, we've got a video on, or if not, ask us a question. There's some fine print about limits and how to treat tax and different stuff like that. So if you're not sure, certainly ask your accountant, your financial planner, or contact us and we can help you with that stuff. But otherwise, there's plenty of ways to get money in there, so there's no excuse not to have a large amount of super when you retire.